Welcome back to another episode of the Bigger Than Me podcast. Here is your host, Aaron P.
Corner Gas is a Canadian classic. I've spoken with Brent Butt, Lauren Cardinal, Nancy Robertson, and now I have the privilege of speaking with the actor who played Hank Yarbo. My guest today is Fred Ewanuick. Fred, it is an honor to have you on the show. I'm so excited to speak with you. Would you first mind briefly introducing yourself?
Sure. My name's Fred Ewanuick, and I don't know what else to say. I pretend for a living. I think. I don't know. It's been a little while.
Yeah, don't take yourself too seriously. Well, you were on a very, very popular show, but I want to pull way back to the beginning. In an interview you did with Leroy, you talked about growing up, being somewhat of the class clown, going to college, your experiences there, and then wanting to drive trucks. I'm wondering if you can just reflect on that period of your life. Who were you, and where did you want to go in life?
Oh man, wow! I didn't think we were going to get this deep.
We're getting deep.
Oh no! Well, I hate to bore your viewers and listeners. Yeah, well, I don't know. Okay, all right. I grew up on the West Coast, town called Port Moody, which isn't really a town anymore. It's like a full-on explosive suburb now. It's like it's its own city. It's not a suburb. But when I grew up, there was about 5,000 people. I think it's quite a bit more now. It's probably closer to, don't quote me, but 40,000 almost. So 30 to 40,000. And so it really felt a bit isolated. So small school, there was just a couple elementary schools in Port Moody when I grew up, and I went to Moody Elementary, which was a block away from my house. So I walked to school every day. Actually, all the schools I went to, Moody Elementary, Moody Junior, Moody Senior. I drove to Moody Senior, even though it was walkable, because I got my license in grade 12. So I drove like the 4 or 5 blocks just because I wanted to be cool. But yeah, like you said, I was a class clown. I was a really shy kid, scared of a lot of stuff, asked a lot of questions because I didn't know so much. According to my godmother, Marion, she always tells this story whenever family gets together and reminisce, that I would ask a lot of, like, I was constantly asking questions, like stupid questions. Why is the sky blue? Why is this that? Why is that? And Marion asked me one day, is I think, Freddie, you ask a lot of questions, and my response is, well, Marion, it's because I don't know so much. And and so she loves telling that. And I kind of like, it always makes me giggle when she tells it. But super shy kid, scared of a bunch of stuff, like everything. And so going from elementary school, this is a long-winded way of getting to why I became the class clown. Going into junior high, going from grade 7 to grade 8, a group of my friends and I got together to walk to school for the first day of grade 8. And, the whole talk was like, oh, grade 8s, they're going to initiate you. They're going to lock you in the lockers. They're going to write 8 on your forehead with, permanent markers, and they're going to beat you up and all this stuff. And so I was terrified. I was like, and I was a little fella, like I'm still a little fella. And like, I'm not going to survive this. Like, what's going to happen? Like, I'm meat. Like, I'm done. I'm history. And the first couple weeks of school, I haven't actually maybe I've told this story before. I had my first incidents of being bullied. And it was this guy, I won't say his name because years later, he's a wicked dude. But he was a bigger guy, and this is probably how he was surviving grade 8. And for some reason, he pointed me out, and he came up, and it was in between classes, so the hall was full, and he puts me in a headlock. And I can't remember what he's saying, but it was a pretty aggressive headlock. And I pretended to pass out, and because I didn't know what to do.
Whoa.
And so I just like went limp, and he freaked out, and he started crying, and he ran out of the building. And then I was kind of lying there, and I guess everybody in the hall was kind of like, and then I got up and giggled and did a little, like, one of those heel kicks, those like old timey heel kicks, and like went off to class, and then everybody was laughing, and that was kind of like my first clown moment. And like, but in the preamble, we joked, I'm just smart enough to realize I'm not that smart. I was smart enough in that moment to realize, oh, this is my survival mechanism. If I can make people laugh, maybe they won't beat me up. And so it seemed to work. But the downside of that, as I found over the years, is it's hard to get people to take you seriously when you act like an idiot all the time. So I think that's my lesson, I guess.
What I love about that period is I imagine a lot of people are in that circumstance. So like, I don't think many people's younger years are where they feel like they stand out, where they feel comfortable within themselves, or feel like they really have a strong sense of identity. And you starting from there and being so well known to so many is, I think, inspiring, and something that's different than so many who come from a place where they were always confident, or they always felt comfortable within themselves, or knew where they wanted to go. Your story doesn't reflect that. And I think that's more broadly reflective of how everyday people feel, is that they're trying to figure it out as they go along. And I think there's inspiration to be found in that story.
Well, if that's true, I hope that's a positive thing. Man, we are going way deeper than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Which I'm not opposed to. Don't get me wrong. You're
gonna love my next question.
Oh no, I don't know. Like it is a strange. I'm 53. I'm of a certain generation. That things were different for sure, and I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but our society has progressed incredibly from when I was a kid. Now, by no means am I going to sit here and tell you that we're in good shape. Like, as a society, we've got a ton to work on. But I just think, when I get together with my friends and stuff, and we reminisce about the old days, it's like, wow, like we were horrible to each other, right? Like, but we found, like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like I started playing team sports, hockey and lacrosse specifically. I started playing lacrosse from a dare. I started playing hockey because I wanted to be Richard Brodeur. But there's something about being in a team, and I'm this shy, scared kid. So it'd be a great comedic movie. I got dared to play box lacrosse, and I was terrified. But when you get put back then, when you get put into that team environment, and you've got a team behind you, it's a weird thing. It's like, if you buy in, if you play your role, if you find your role, play your role, you're accepted. And it doesn't mean you have to be the best, or you even have to be good. It's just like you're making an effort, right? And that was me in lacrosse, especially. Right. It gives you an external confidence. Even though I didn't have an internal confidence, that team, especially my lacrosse team, and especially when I got to junior, that team gave me an external confidence to help me improve myself. Even though there was a whole bunch going on inside I had to deal with. Does that make sense? I don't know.
It does. Well, like, you even connect it to like how big people are fans of like the Canucks. And you think about that, they're like, their identity in some circumstances, like on the night of game day, they're a Canucks fan. They're not advertising anything else. They are connected to something else. And the outcome of that team somehow defines who they are, which I find like really interesting, because I like the UFC, but it's like they go out there, one person fights one other person. I have nothing to do with it. I don't get to claim that I had anything to do with it. But when you're a fan of a team, you're on the team. You're with them. And it's just, when you look back at the riots, like, some people take that very, very seriously. Some people like to cause shenanigans, but some people take their relationship with a team very, very seriously, because it gives them that sense of identity.
Yeah, unfortunately, some fans get fanatical. Yeah, in that situation. Yeah, I can see I see where you're going with that. Yeah, I mean, yeah. And speaking with the Canucks, I feel that for sure. I've been a Canuck fan as long as I can remember, and the way the team goes, like, their defeats are my defeats. Especially against the Bruins and those sorts of things. Is I feel it. You're right. You feel like you're part of that. community. It's a community, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's the heavy question for you. We're going to go deep here.
That wasn't the heavy question?
That's not the heavy question. Get ready for this.
All right. Give me a sec. All right. I'm ready.
Okay, so in that same interview, you talked about the impact of one other person who played a significant role in you being connected to Corner Gas. And I think that's really inspiring because sometimes somebody else helps you open a door and advocates for you. And it reminds me that one person can make a difference in the life of other people. And you talked about Lynn Caro and how she supported you when you went into audition, how she helped you prepare, and then how she, it sounds like, advocated for you in terms of getting your role on Corner Gas. And when fans of the show watch this, they're going to know how instrumental you are to the show. And it's because of somebody else that helped you kind of move in that trajectory that opened that door for you. And I'm just wondering if you can reflect on her impact on helping you get that role.
Yeah, Lynn Carroll. Yeah, she was a casting director in town. She's since retired. And she's just a fantastic person. And it's funny in this business, there's casting directors that get you, casting directors that don't, and some you're a hard sell on, some like just seem to really like what you're doing, and it's easy to get opportunities with them. And so going back to confidence and like being, I don't know how I got into this business because I'm really shy and anxious, but for whatever reason, whenever I went to see Lynn Caro, whether it's early on for pre-screens or any kind of taping, I just felt really comfortable. I felt like, I guess safe, like I felt like it was going to be okay. Like, I'm not going to make an idiot of myself. And if I did, she wouldn't let me fail, if that makes sense. So even before the Corner Gas stuff came up, she really got behind me for some reason. And not just me, obviously. She had a bunch of people that she was really supportive of. I've talked to other actors and they all feel the same way about her and gave them opportunities. And there was, before Corner Gas, actually, there was one, she brought me in to read for the Santa Claus 2. This movie. I don't know if you saw that movie. It's a Christmas movie.
Of course.
And so I wasn't auditioning for it. They needed a reader behind the camera, and she'd never called me to read before. And so she got me in there to read, and she said something that I can't remember. It didn't make sense. I was a little nervous because I've never done reading for her before. But the director was in all these sessions, and during one of the auditions, this was really funny. She, not Lynn, but the director was like, so somebody was auditioning. I was reading for them, and they did their audition. It was a good audition, and I was reading off camera for the role that I ended up getting in the thing. And the director's like, hey, do you guys mind? Hey, Fred, do you guys mind switching? Fred, can you go in front of the camera? You guys just doing the scene again for me, please? All right. And that's how I got it. And I found out, I got the feeling, the sense that Lynn didn't know where I would fit in this show, but felt like, oh, maybe if I get him to read, something might click. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that. So this is what I'm talking about with the buildup with her. Like, I just felt really supported by her whenever I had to come in, and I was auditioning for something else. And when my audition was over, she followed me out of the room and she just said, hey, I want to give you a heads up. There's something coming down the line. I'm going to get the scripts, the sides to your agent. I want you to have a look at them. Not sure when it's going to happen, but I really want you, and I'm going to push for you in this. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And it was obviously Corner Gas. And when I went into audition, and I don't know this part, you'd have to ask Brent, like why, but there's usually an initial session where there's a bunch of people come in and then they tape. And then there's a callback session where usually the director and producers are there. And so the initial session, I show up and we're taping, and usually you go in, you do it once. Maybe they give you a couple notes. Maybe they don't. They're like, oh, that was good. Or you're not right. They won't tell you that, but they'll go, oh, thanks. And you do it once. But sometimes they'll, oh, I really like that. Can you do this here? And the initial session, I show up and there wasn't anybody else in the waiting room. Like, it was just me. And then it was just me and Lynn. Usually there's like a reader but Lynn was reading with me, if I remember correctly. I might have that wrong. I may be remembering this wrong, but it was. I just remember it was us, and we worked at it a long time. Like we did the stuff a bunch of times, and took a while at it. Not super long, but longer than normal. And then I didn't hear anything about it, but I was like, oh, that was different. But all right, cool. And then when the callbacks came, we went through that, and Brent was there, and David Story was there, and Lynn was there. And David Story was our head director, and obviously Brent Butt was everybody knows Brent Butt, and did the callbacks, and it went really well. Like it was by then my confidence was big because I figured, yeah, they obviously want to see me. This is great. Once you get the callback, you feel a little better. You're like, oh, okay, I'm doing something right. But that wasn't the case. Like if Lynn told me before going into the callback that, like, look, these guys aren't that keen on you. Like I had to really push to get them to see you at this point. I would have fumbled and fallen apart. She just didn't tell me. And behind the scenes, what was going on was, like, I guess Lynn sent in the tape, and Brent and the other producers and stuff were, yeah, okay, but not really what we're looking for. And Lynn, like, was like, no, you're gonna see him at the callbacks. He's the guy, and I'm obviously paraphrasing. I'm sure it went down a lot different than that, but Brent told me this part, so I know it went down something like that. So I would have never got that part if Lynn told me beforehand, like, look, they don't really like you, but I'm bringing you in anyway. I would have fell apart in the room. But then that's another example of external confidence, right? Like people around me instilled some confidence. So you think, oh, all right, I guess I'm all right. So you go in there and you just do it. So Lynn Carroll, I legitimately would not have gotten Corner Gas if it was not for Lynn Carroll. Obviously I did my part too. Like, I came in and I did my job, but I wouldn't have got that opportunity. And I'm who knows how life would have gone, but yeah, I'm forever grateful for that. Now I'm going to think, I know I've sent her an email in the past thanking her. But geez, now I feel like I gotta go and reconstitute another one and send it out her way. I miss her. I could use Lynn right now. My career is stalled a little bit. I gotta convince her to get out of retirement.
There's something about that story for me that really resonates. And I think it comes to this idea of the importance of mentorship and supporting people in their craft. Like I see it a lot with musicians, even talking to other podcast hosts. Like we don't get a lot of encouragement. When you go out on your own, when you're trying to do your own thing, it can be incredibly lonely to be trying to figure it out, whether you're an artist and you're painting. Like, I don't know if you watch The Office, but there's that scene where Pam's standing there and she's got all of her art up and everybody who comes to visit doesn't really care. And then Michael walks in and wants to buy a piece, and like that matters to her. And I think so often when you're trying to do your own thing, I know acting can be incredibly independent because you're going into the auditions, that like there's not a lot of support, and how much it matters for someone to advocate for you, for them to believe in you, can play a huge role in your sense of confidence. And just when I look at, like, I cover a lot of journalism and stuff, and there's not a lot of like the old guard of journalists passing on what they know to new journalists on best practices on how things went. And so like we need to exchange that information so we can all do a better job. And there's something to what she did for you, like believing in you at times maybe more than you believed in yourself. And that's such a gift to give another person. And it's so easily missed, whether it's a teacher helping out a student or something, but those moments can really shape us and move us in a direction. And hers just really stood out when you told that story of like, wow, one person can like just kind of push you a little bit further, and it can open doors in ways that might not have happened had she not played that role. And then you can do that and other people can do that. And it's just a call to action for all of us to remember that we can be that beacon of hope for another person, whether it's like, hey, you got to try that again. You can do this. You've got this. Like that can really resonate with a person when they need it most.
Yeah, well, for sure. Those people, I hope everybody has people like that come through their lives. I've been really fortunate that I've had a number of people come through my life, family, friends, colleagues that have been that sort of thing for me. sometimes I like sometimes people can be that person, but for some reason the message, the way they send the message isn't as good, and we're resistant to that.
Yeah.
Which is, it's such a fine line. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that's the case, because, you know, like, maybe as kids and your parents, they're those people for you at times, but you're just like, ah, shut up. I can find the thing. But then,
Yeah.
like, somebody like Lynn Carroll comes around, no, you can do it. You're like, oh, thanks, I can do it. You know,
I believe you.
yeah. It's a bit funny. Who we decide to allow to be that person for us, maybe. I don't know.
So my understanding is season 1, everybody was kind of expecting like maybe this goes nowhere. Brent Butt has said like we didn't know if we were going to get renewed or not. We were kind of just having fun with it, and we'd see where the chips land. But then you get the response that over 1 million people have watched this. Happens very, very rarely and hadn't happened in years. And then Corner Gas does that. You get a call from the heads of CTV saying you killed it. Season 2 is coming. We're so excited. How did that impact you? Did that mean something to you personally, that like you were a part of something that produced such an impact across Canada?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously I was incredibly happy. I was really, it's nice to be a part of something that people like. Before that, I mean, I've done stuff I'm proud of, like other things, but most of the stuff I was doing, people weren't watching, or, you know, it wasn't yeah, I don't want to be disrespectful, but like I've done stuff that just, you know, people weren't interested in, maybe, right? Did other things too that, like I said, were good and I was proud of. But this was the first thing where it's like, oh wow, like a lot of people like it. Like it's incredibly proud to be part of something like that. Now I gotta be, all I've done on that show is show up, pretend other words that people have written, right? Like, I'm not belittling my role in that by any means, but this is, you know, and I was like proud of my part in it. But you know, all of that is on guys like Brent and all the writers and showrunners that have helped the show along the way. The crew, like all those people, like helped create that. But if Brent didn't have that, and if David Story wasn't in a pitch session and they were like not liking any of his ideas, and like, what else have you guys? Like, well, there's this idea that, you know, this comedian I know has, that you know, another thing that never would have happened, right?
Interesting. What do you think resonated with people about the first season? Like, if you had to go back and see, like, why did this hit when so many other shows don't? What do you think it was?
I can't tell you. I have no idea. I mean, here's the things I know are facts of the show. One, it's funny. Like, you can't deny it. Might not be your sense of humor. I've heard that, but it is funny. Like, it's quality. It's well written. It looks really cool. They shot on Super 16, so it had a really unique kind of look to it. And it was a show that didn't try too hard, and the whole family could watch. You know, and it wasn't vanilla. Like, you know, there was the odd racy sort of innuendo and stuff in there, and wordplay and stuff, but it wasn't risky. It was just happy. It was easy. And so there's that. So I understand why people like it, but like, to the extent that it was as popular as it was in the moment, and it seems to have legs. Like, it still seems to be picking up audiences here and there. I can't tell you. All I can say is, because I've listened to Brent answer questions like this, and Brent said a number of things, but one of the things he said that I think is probably the most accurate is that he just made a show that he wanted to watch. Like, he wasn't trying to figure out what's going to be a hit, what's going to be, you know, a big show. He just went about creating and writing a show that he would like to see. And then you just put it out there, and whatever happens, happens, right? So,
a huge piece from my perspective is that it was warm. in the sense that, like, I think a lot of people have complicated familial relationships, people they might not get along with, complicated family dinners or Christmas dinners, and some of those things can be really heavy. And what you see with, like, I know Big Bang Theory was like a competitor of you guys's, or you guys were on similar wavelengths at the same time, is that people just want something where they can trust that it's going to be funny, but that they can relate to family members they don't have. Like, I didn't have many of the family members that you guys portrayed, but there was something warm about the idea that that's how you would want your uncle or your cousin or someone to be like. There was something admirable about their humor and the simplicity of it that maybe people weren't getting from their home lives, or it was nostalgic in a way that connects them to who they remember their family member being, or something like that.
Right. You telling me people wish they had an Oscar in their life?
I would love to have an Oscar in my life.
I would
Tim,
too.
my producer, is sometimes my Oscar, where he's just calling me out on how I'm messing up or could be doing things better, and it's much appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. I'd like to have an Oscar in my life. I might be Oscar. I don't know. But no, I'm Hank for sure. Yeah. But you might be onto something. I mean, there's definitely a warmth to it. It's genuine for sure. Like that's what I was trying to say when I said it doesn't try too hard. It just is, like, it's funny because, like, I don't know that it would be a show that I would naturally be drawn to. Like the show grew on me, right? Like, and that's not to say I didn't understand it or didn't think it was funny. But I was always, the thing I was most proud about being part of that show was that the whole family could sit down and watch it. And at the time, and even now, I think that there's not enough of that on television. Yeah. So I don't know. It's, not to get deep into it, there was always a bit of weirdness in the industry, not with the viewing public, but in the, I mean, I had its detractors in the public too, but there was this kind of like weird sort of, not hate, but dislike for the show. And I could never figure it out. Like I had not a run-in, but a creator that, I really admired, created a lot of shows. And they told me straight out at the Geminis once that they just, they hate the show and they think it's terrible. And I never understood it. Like, cause like, if it's not your sense of humor, if it's not your taste, that's fair. Like, that's a fair response. But to say it's terrible and garbage, and I heard that a few times over the years, I'm like, well, then no, that's not fair, because the show is quality. Like, agreed. It might not be your take, but it's quality. A lot of hard work goes into it. The writing is like the writing was always top notch. Yeah. And the cast is incredibly respectable. The crew was like, everything about that show was quality. So that's the only time I get my back ruffled up. Like, if somebody doesn't like it, it's not my sense of humor. I'm like, yeah, that's fair, no problem. I got at a coffee shop once. We were in for coffee, and the guy, I think Nancy was there too, if I remember right. This was in Regina. It's like, oh, hey, you guys are Corner Gas. And we're like, oh yeah. He's like, yeah, I don't care for that show. And I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, not my sense. And I think he even said, not my sense of humor. I'm like, totally fair. Thanks. I'll Americano, please. But so that's legit. That stuff is all legit to me. But
Lauren Cardinal came on the show, and one of the things that really stood out to me in this same vein.
Does he want his $20? I owe him $20. Is that what he was like?
No, I think we're safe on that front. But he just talked about how, like, some of the stories that he heard about the impact of the show, and one of them that, like, has never left me is that and maybe you were too, but like, that people in Afghanistan fighting over there had reached out and that they were watching the show when they were being rocket attacked, because it gave them that sense of home. And I'm wondering if you have any reflections on that, or like experiences on how the show impacted people.
That example actually is look, acting is a lot of work. It's not hard work, right? Like before I got into acting, I used to work. Some of my buddy's dad was a plumber, so we'd work digging holes and ditches and stuff. That's hard work, right? Like, but acting's a lot of work. So I never, early on, I didn't really have a lot of respect for what I was doing. It was just fun, right? It was a job. Like I took it seriously. Don't get me wrong. Like I always wanted to be prepared, know my stuff, and do the best I could. But it's fun. So I never thought it was important. Like I would always joke, like when the zombies come, the last thing they're gonna need is a bunch of guys that pretend for a living, right? Like it's just like, well, maybe I could pretend to be a zombie and like lure them away.
Fit right in, yeah.
Maybe. Anyway, so that story was the first time where it kind of changed my perspective a little bit in terms of entertainment. And like, I remember being told that story, and it was impactful in that way. And I had no idea that it could do that. Like, it's an escape. People come home from work, they want to forget about their day. Oh, yeah, okay. No. But when we heard that, it's one of those things. It's like, oh yeah, right. There's people all over the world going through horrible things, and holy crap, these people being bombarded by shells and things, and they're sitting there watching our show, and that's helping them get through it. That hit a spot for sure. Yeah.
I think it's really important, and I don't know if you've heard that the Prime Minister said that we don't have like a shared national identity. But like, I've lived in BC my whole life. I've been to Saskatchewan one time. I don't have any connection to that region or anything like that. But like, to me, that show does reflect Canadian values, and it does reflect, and that's why I think it was so successful. Is it was in the compassion and the kindness. It was in those moments that like our values came through. It wasn't necessarily because Stephen Harper was on, or this political like it was that those are our values, that we are simple, like quality people who care about each other, and we tease each other, and we're just a good, wholesome community of people across Canada. And like, we haven't really had a show like that since, that's really like entered the zeitgeist and been able to be embraced across Canada in the same way. And so I noticed people reach out to you and Brent, and like, we keep pulling you back to a character you played quite a few years ago now, but it's because there's nothing like it still. There's nothing that competes with that we can all agree that that's what reflects Canadian values.
Well, I'm going to defer to you. You would know better than me. The Canadian values thing it's tough to figure out these days. It does seem a bit muddied. I don't know what that means anymore, to have Canadian values. But yeah, what Corn to Gas was, in a very quirky, animated way. Like, you got all these characters from all sides of the spectrum, like all over the map. Every episode, they find a way to come together, pull their pants up, and get stuff done, right? Like, yeah, we don't come together as a nation like we used to. I don't think. We seem to be fighting each other, not so much like our neighbors, but there's that, right? And when I was younger, for sure, we've always had our differences, always, but we always seem to come together. And I don't want to get too, because I don't know enough about it, but I was so disappointed during the pandemic at our response as individuals, and how we just got so divided about it. And I'm not going to get into it because I don't know enough about it. But what disappointed me was how we weren't able to sort of come together in this moment, the extreme moment, to kind of get through it out the other end, and then sort out what we're wrong. Does that, do you know what I mean?
Yes, because we did have that period where we were all jingling things,
Yeah, and then
we were going out at 7 p.m., but then that did come to an end.
Yeah,
and then
abruptly.
We were in anarchy. Yeah.
Like abruptly, it seemed. And I'm not going to pretend to understand why, but it was like, that seemed new for the Canadian experience, if you want to say. And I don't know if we figure out how to sort that out yet.
I don't think we have, and I don't see anything on the near horizon, but I do think that's where shows can often give us, like, we don't need to debate politics. We don't need to we need places where we can gather, where we're not just arguing with each other. And we don't have shared shows anymore. We have 15 different streaming sites that are all streaming different shows. And you talk to, hey, did you watch this? No, I don't have that app, or I don't do and it's like, we don't have a shared kind of 7 p.m. channel anymore where we all kind of gather and agree that that's top of mind. But my next question for you is, who was Hank Yarbo from your perspective?
The smartest guy in the room, the hottest looking dude, brimming with confidence.
Yeah.
You know, he's everything I wish I was. He's he's actually that. Like he thinks he's, for lack of a better phrase, he thinks he's the shit. He thinks he knows it all. But the thing about Hank that I do actually connect with, that I tried to put into him, is he's genuine, he's real. He's not, you get what you get with Hank. Like there's no ulterior motive. He's not two-faced. What comes out of Hank's mouth is exactly what Hank's thinking. You know, and I like people like that. Like I like people that understand that about themselves, number one, right? Like and you know, let you know where you stand with them. Respectfully. So I don't know, that's who Hank is to me. I mean, I always played him like he when he walked into a room, or every time he walked into the gas station, he was like, yeah, I'm the smartest guy here.
My reflections on the character, and like, you can correct me if you disagree.
No, because it's you won't be wrong, because they're your reflections.
Right. Is the I think it was again in the context of like playing a character, and I know like actors don't have the world's hardest job, but in the character you played, I actually think it may have been one of the more challenging ones, because you're regularly agreeing to play the butt of the joke. Right? Like in many circumstances, you're the person being gaffed on or teased or mocked, and like, in a sense, like, to remove yourself and just think like you're playing that character. And I think at times that actually is one of the most challenging characters, because you have to kind of live with the levity of that circumstance. Other characters like Brent, like he's usually like he got the answer, he got the quick snarky response, like it's humorous, but he gets to play kind of the gotcha person, and you regularly were the butt of the joke. And I think there's something admirable about putting yourself in that circumstance, and that's why I think it's not just that you agreed to play the character because you kind of at the beginning you were like, well, like I just read lines. But there's also something to be said for agreeing to play the character that get teased and mocked a lot throughout the whole show, that you were willing to be that to people. And that, like, I don't know about you, but like sometimes when you're hanging out with friends, people do not like being the butt of the joke. Like they are very against that. Like I'll have friends and I'll push their button and then they'll be like, that's too far. No, like I don't like that. And it's like, it's actually a lot of work to kind of take it on the chin. And when my friends tease me, I do my best to just like eat it and enjoy the roast or whatever the teasing is going to be. But like, that's actually a little bit more work than I think people might realize. And it brought the show together in a really good way, because there could be somebody you were allowed to kind of laugh at or laugh at the circumstance and enjoy in a different way. And I think there's a lot of importance to that role.
That's a great, that's a great, that's great perspective. I mean, I definitely felt that and understood that. And it did, I wouldn't say it was challenging, but there was times where, you know, I go back to my condo and I was like, oh, I wish I could, I wish I could get the funny lines here and there, right? But that was usually stifled pretty quick because I genuinely loved playing Hank. Like, it wasn't hard for me to be Hank. The only challenge I found was that the longer the show went on, season 3, by the end of season 3, I was really upset with myself because I felt towards the end of season 2 and most of season 3, I really felt like I was phoning it in. And like, so going into season 4, I kind of gave myself a bit of a talking to, and I was like, no, look, you got a job, you got to go in and you got to be on it, right? You got to be present on set. You got to be prepared. I mean, there was days in season 2. Yeah, I'll just be on. Like, there was this pub O'Hanlon's that we would go to, and there were a couple of nights where, I won't say the other cast member, where myself and the other cast member would literally stumble out of there at daylight and like have an hour before we had to get in the van to get out to work. Like, I'd look at my day and was like, I only got one scene, I can take a day off, kind of thing. And not by, I was never, drunk on set or anything. I don't want to give this impression that I was like Mickey Rourke or something. Like, well, that's not fair to Mickey Rourke. I don't know Mickey Rourke. Why? I don't know why I said Mickey Rourke. He's probably a great guy. He's a great actor. Why did I say Mickey Rourke? I feel terrible now. Cut that part out, would you? But my point being is that was the challenge. So from 4 on, well, season 1 and most of 2, I was like, this is my job. And then for some reason, I just got lazy and phoned it in for a bit. So that was the challenge. It was like being professional, right? That coming out of Corner Gas, that's what it taught me most, is like being on a show for that long. It's easy to forget what your job is, right? And that was the biggest challenge for me. Not so much, I didn't mind being by the joke. Look, somebody's got to get hurt for comedy. Like, if somebody's not getting hurt, either physically or emotionally, being made fun of, there's no comedy. Like, where's the comedy? Like, like that. You got to point and laugh at something, like that. You have to. Yeah. And so, I guess I was too dumb to realize it. That I should be like, how come I don't get all the funny lines? I'm being fun. But I just loved playing Hank, and I've been asked it over the years, and I meant it every time I've said it. I would have played Hank for the rest of my life, I would have been completely content and happy. I love that character. It's by far my favorite character I've played. I've had other characters I really love playing, but if I was to play a character for my entire life, it would be Hank. I love that. Every minute of it.
I know this is inside baseball in like a lot of ways, but like there's just something to the characters that were developed. Like, you in the show developing the Lego set of Corner Gas in Lego form, like that can seem like just a joke, but there is something to the fact that like whatever your creative endeavor is, like run with it. Like, don't define what your creative endeavor is based by other people's standards. And like I found that so valuable. Like having like Wanda play this character of like, you're incredibly intelligent and most of it is not useful in your day-to-day life. Like, there's something to that like, I know a lot of people who think they've got it all figured out because they're very good at math or something. And it's like, but then you still don't know how to get an oil change in your car. Like, there's these funny disconnects where you see in people that I think are so relatable. The other piece that I think is important that we touch on is Nancy Robertson talked about the Tragically Hip performing. So did Brent. But like, I think it was really special that you were all able to highlight other Canadian icons and Canadian voices throughout the show. And again, there's not many shows doing what you guys did, but there's also not shows doing a good job of kind of like raising up those other voices and bringing in, whether it's prime ministers or Olympic athletes, and kind of like pulling them in. Can you reflect on the Tragically Hip coming out and performing and being able to be a part of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the biggest. and no disrespect, because we also had a couple of kids in the hall guys who, I was a huge Kids in the Hall
Legends,
fan. Yeah. And the prime minister's, that's a huge, like, that's huge. That's huge.
Huge.
And and just to, because I know Harper is a divisive figure in Canadian politics. He was fantastic on the show, right? And I'm definitely not conservative leaning, so I'm not going to say what my politics are, but I wouldn't have voted for Harper. Oh, there, I just said. But he was incredible. You know what I mean? So you're right. For him to come into the show and be able to contribute and be part of the family, essentially.
And be the butt of the joke. Like, he switches his sides. Like, he was willing to be like a class politician.
He nailed it. Like, let's be honest. He nailed it. Martin too, when he came on, he was fantastic. So Daryl Sittler, like, come on. But the Hip, my buddy who's no longer with us, Derek Usher, introduced me to the Tragically Hip. Derek Usher, I'm not going to get into it because it'll make me cry. But Derek Usher is one of these people that come through your lives and change you. Derek Usher. Anybody that I know who watches this will know what I'm talking about. But anyway, he got me onto the Hip. And the Hip, for me, I don't know how to say this. Every album the Hip puts out, I don't like initially. But then I just keep listening to it. And then I just can't not listen to the Hip anymore. And his voice, his words, the music, it, like, every time I listen to a Hip song, like, it just it showers me, right? And I'm not over exaggerating. Like, I said on Leroy, and we were talking about Desert Islands and what album, and I'm like, can you pick your favorites? Like that's an album, right? Of the Hip, and that's what I would want. Like, so when I heard they were coming on the show, I don't get starstruck, like, I don't. The only other time I got starstruck was when I met Richard Berdeur at a golf store in North Vancouver. Richard Berdeur is a Canucks King Richard, Canucks goalie in the 80s, took him to the finals. And this is the only other time I couldn't talk to somebody.
Right.
And it was like that with the Hip. So we did those. Well, they were just there for the one day. We did our sort of half in Rolo, and then the Hip came and did their half in the studio, and they got swamped, right? But like, all of a sudden our crew grew by threefold. Like, I was like, who are all these people? Like, and they're all there to see the Hip. And I do this. It got me emotional when I was doing. So they're doing their thing, and it was amazing. They're doing it private, and they're going at it. They're singing it, like, take after take. And so I'm like 5 feet away from Gord Downie, and he's bolting out those lyrics, and I'm just a blah, right? And then they finish, and then they get bombarded by people, rightfully so. And they're so gracious. They're talking to everybody, all of them. And I'm just kind of standing in the back of the room like an idiot. And then finally, I just, I kind of scuffled out. That was my last scene of the day. And I'm signing out. And a van's pulling out as I'm signing my sheet out for the day. And then I see the van come back. And it's the Hip. They're getting driven back to their hotel. And Gord opens the door and he gets out. I don't know, every time I talk about it, I don't know, it's such a big deal for me. And he gets out, and I guess he could see that I was there, right? And he just talks with me like a normal person. And I'm like, wow, here's this kid's talking about. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, well, my wife and I are going across the country. We're going to drive. He's like, oh man, we're going across the country on tour. And he's like, maybe we'll see each other. And I'm like, oh yeah, man. Like, well, really? That'd be great. And I wish I knew him. I wish I knew him, because he just, in that 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I was just like, oh, wow, this guy, I see why people think people might be gods. Because he was just so, in that moment anyway, just so genuine and open. And not Gord Downie, big star. Just, I don't know. It took a lot for him. For him to recognize that I was like wanting to say something. From what I could gather, maybe he was just like forgot his watch and ran into me, but that's not how it went. And it's one of those moments that for whatever reason gets me emotional when I talk about it, but sticks with me. I think about that every once in a while, and I just think, oh wow, that was one of the coolest moments of my life. Yeah, big deal. That was a huge deal.
I appreciate you for being willing to share that. It's, to be honest with you,
yeah, damn you for bringing it up, right? Because like, I don't know, it got a little emotional too when I was talking about Leroy, and I was like, all right, in this moment, I can talk about it, and no, apparently I can't. I don't know why. So stupid. But.
Well, like I want you to know that, like, I understand you. Like, Gord, I'm sure, didn't see himself the way other people saw him, right? And so, like, in these circumstances, the fact that I've gotten to, like, I grew up and I would put on Corner Gas before I'd go to bed on my computer, and it would just play all the episodes all the way through, and I'd wake up and have to press pause in the morning. Like, that's the amount that I would consume Corner Gas. Like, my partner and I watch it every year in summertime, and we, like, it's a family tradition for us to do that. And so, like, great. The opportunity to speak with you, like, Brent, like, the fact that you guys are being willing to share your time on something, and, like, I know it was an opportunity for you guys at the time, but I also understand that when you're a creator, you don't want to be typecast as just one thing, right? Like, I don't want to be known just for one single interview or like for one thing I do in my life. You're a broad, like, interesting person that has different interests, and you've played different characters over your life. Like, you're always pulled back to this role. So the fact that you're all willing to do this and share your time and reflect on these moments, I really appreciate, in a very similar lens to what that interaction meant for you with Gord. Like, this means a lot to me to have the opportunity to speak with you on these things.
Well, that's nice. I'm glad. Obviously, I'm good. I'm glad. And thanks for saying that. You bring up the, actors always worried about being typecast. That was never a concern of mine. I mean, the only challenge with that is, like, well, if you can't get other work, how are you going to pay the bills, right? But I've never like, I love acting. Well, here's the thing. I don't know if I love acting. I love being on set. And if that means I have to act, then I'll do it. I tried being a stage actor, and, like, I just can't. Anxiety is no good. And but so it was just about, like I said it with Hank. Like, I found that character, and that gave me, well, more than 6 years, because we did the movie and then we did the cartoon, like almost 10 years of work. That's like, so that's great. If that means, if that's what typecast means, then okay, bring it. Like, can I do that for another 10 though? Right? Because, like, I'm not ready to stop being on set. Like, I want to be on set more. And I don't get to do it as much as I'd like. Like, I've been pretty lucky. I seem to get 1 or 2 things a year, but it's not enough for I guess that's my addiction, maybe, being on set. It's the same with hockey. I still play hockey. I'm a goalie. I don't know if I actually like playing hockey. I just really like being a goalie. I like the gear. I started, one of my buddies is a goalie coach, and he'll take me out to do training sessions, right? To, be a better goalie. And I like that more than I like actually playing hockey games. Right. So I think acting's like that for me. It's like, yeah, I like acting, but I just really love being on set. Like, and it's got to be a part of something. And that's what Corner Gas spoiled me, is when you get on a long running show like that, it's really comfortable. It's like you're home. It's work. Don't get me wrong. It's work. You got to be prepared, but you get to set. You feel like you're a part of it. It's like, it's just clear. It's like being part of a team. It's being on that team, right? Like, maybe that's why I liked it, because I'm not a confident guy, but you get all these people around you that sort of instill confidence in you. Maybe that's
And
it.
then you're part of an energy, like a positive energy, rather than you just carrying it or that person just carrying it.
Yeah.
You're all contributing to the good energy.
Like I did Dan for mayor, and by no, it wasn't like what Brent was doing. Brent was like doing everything. I was just the lead guy. I didn't have to write it. I didn't have to produce it or nothing. And I was like, oh man, this is for the birds. Like I just want to be Hank, right? Like when you have to be responsible for all of it, that's just way more stress than I'm able to manage, right? So I think that's why I like Hank so much, because I can just be, but I can't be on my own. I need that family.
Can I ask, was the animated series different in a way that maybe wasn't quite as rewarding because you're not on set, you're just producing the voices, or did that work because you're still doing the same jokes, but you're just doing it verbally, you're not in a community? It's somewhat a different thing, right?
Yeah, it's the same but different. It's the same in like, especially because we started that just before the pandemic, and then the pandemic, I think, was season 2. Can't remember now. So initially we were all in the room together. Well, half of us were in Vancouver and the other half were in Toronto, but we were all connected via, so it was like doing a radio play. So that was great. It was a very similar experience, but lazier, right? Like I didn't have to go through hair and makeup, and like our day wasn't 8 to 10 hours. It was like 3 to 4 hours.
But you also couldn't hang out afterwards with, I guess, the people from Toronto too, right?
No, you couldn't. But I don't know, like as the show went on, I mean, we still hung out. We went for dinners from time to time. But as the show went on, we kind of like found our own sort of pockets of life out there. Like, so we worked together, and then, we did some dinners here and there. Might go for coffee with, go grab a beer with Lauren, or grab a coffee with Nan, or, from time to time, or have a poker game from time to time. But like, you kind of started developing your own life. Like I was playing ultimate frisbee out there. I started golfing with my buddy Warren, who was our sound guy. So you know what I mean? Like it just became work family more, when we started doing the animated stuff, it was just like that. Like you show up, you love everybody. It's great. You do your funny, and we laugh, and then we kind of go back to our lives.
May I ask, what advice would you have, or what would you tell a younger...
I'm not the person to ask for advice.
What would you tell a younger person who's in a similar circumstance to where you were, where maybe you don't have that huge level of confidence, you enjoy being a part of a team? How do people strive forward in those types of circumstances when they don't know exactly where they want to end up when they're older?
Well, look, that's a really good question to ask. Unfortunately, my experience, I'm hesitant to share, because my experience might not be right for people, and they could go try what I might suggest, and it could go horribly wrong, right? So
we won't give them your phone number then.
No, but I don't I think what's helped me, like, I'm incredibly fortunate. I've had a number of people in my life. My wife, number one, who is incredibly supportive. And so it's easy, right? You have somebody that you don't even when you don't want to talk to somebody, understands that you should talk to somebody, and finds ways to get you to talk without you knowing you're talking, right? Like giving your aspirin with some honey, but like the thing, here's the thing though, is I believe this, and I think everybody should try to find a way to make this to work. You have to take responsibility for your own life, and nobody else can. Your happiness is not somebody else's responsibility. Your well-being is not somebody else's responsibility. Your mental health is not somebody else's responsibility. You have to do the work to get out of whatever it is. And that may mean you need help. And so you need to recognize that you need help. And so if you find that people are suggesting you get help a lot, then maybe that's just something that you need to understand. Is like, okay, maybe I need help and I should go get that help. Like, that's all I can say, because everybody's journey is going to be different. I'm still working on mine and I'm 53. So I'm always proud of myself. I always give myself a pat on the back because I'm way better than I was, but I'm nowhere near where I want to be. That's for sure.
Fred, it has been an honor to speak with you.
Stop saying that. The honor's mine. Like, come on. But
you're the man. I appreciate so much for what you've done. Like, as I said, I watched the show. I think you're a huge inspiration. I know that's hard for you to take in, but I hope you can hold space for the impact that you've had on so many and encouraging them to be comfortable with who they are. And I think you're a huge exemplar of that. I think we're incredibly lucky that we've had individuals that have advocated for you, like Lynn. I think we're lucky for her advocacy because you belonged on that show, and we're lucky that all worked out the way that it did. You're the man.
Oh, come on. That's very kind of you to say, but all right, for this one moment, I'll pretend I'm the man. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. How can people follow your work and keep up to date?
Well, I'm not super active on social media. Probably best is Instagram. That seems to be where I post stupid stuff. Be prepared. But it's not my. Well, I guess if you search my name, Fred Ewanuick, you'll find me. But it's Fred Ewanuick. Fred Ewanuick. All one word on Instagram is probably the best.
Best of luck to you. I know you've got some things cooking up and you're working on bringing some new ideas to life. So I wish you the best of luck on that and really appreciate you coming on today.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate you having me. This was way more than I was expecting, but I quite enjoyed it. Thank you.
I am so glad to hear that.
All right.